Fans were astonished when Edward Fox spoke out against COVID vaccines and lockdowns in 2021. But that was only the start. In 2025, he made news again when he turned down movie opportunities due to modifications to the scripts that were too woke. Then there were rumors of his death that he had to deny himself. Laurence Fox, his nephew, lost a huge libel case, paying $180,000 for bogus claims. Edward has just said something that most actors never speak out loud concerning Hollywood's darkest secret. Finally, the truth about what goes on behind closed doors is getting out. On April 13, 1937, Edward Fox was born in Chelsea, London. His life was full of drama, secrets, and family problems from the moment he was born. Robin Fox, his father, was a theater agent. Married an actress called Angela Worthington in October 1935. But right before Edward was born, Robin told Angela something that would stay with her forever. He told her he would never be loyal. He really meant it. Robin had many affairs, including a protracted one with Rosalind Chateau, who produced a son named Daniel in 1948. A lot of people thought Robin was the dad. Things didn't end there. One of Robin's most surprising romances was with Princess Marina, who was married to Prince George. It wasn't simply talk. It put a bizarre and uncomfortable royal dimension to the already complicated family saga. Angela, Edward's mother, was the daughter of the well-known dramatist Frederick Lonsdale. But there was a shadow over that too. She was born before she was married. In 1927, her father wrote plays including The Lady of Scandal, which made him famous. But people didn't know how much his stories were like his own family. They were full of lies, affairs, and fights between people, just like the ones Edward was born into. Edward's family moved to Sussex during World War II to get away from the bombs in London. He was still a little boy when he saw bombs fall, which gave him nightmares and made him shy and silent. He went to Harrow School in the early 1950s, when he was about 13 years old. He didn't do well in school. He barely got 3% on the maths part of his admission exam, but he got in regardless due of his father's influence. He liked learning French and German, but he didn't appreciate how drama was taught. He thought the acting classes were uninteresting and didn't like how the institution put more emphasis on tradition than on originality. Edward was even there when Winston Churchill came to the school twice, but he didn't like any of it. He wasn't kicked out, but he departed early in 1955 because he was bored of the strict rules. That year, when he turned 18, he joined the army to serve his country. Edward was in the military from 1955 to 1957. He wanted to be an officer in the Coldstream Guards, but he didn't make it. Instead, he joined the Loyals Regiment. People later said that he did serve in the Coldstream Guards after all. No matter what, his experience in the army was significantly different from his time at school among rich kids. He liked the discipline, even though it didn't fit with his artistic side. He started auditioning for acting parts when he finished his duty at age 20. One director stated Edward wasn't very talented, but he did note that Edward liked to recite theatrical speeches on the street. He lost a job at Marks & Spencer once because he wore a suit with big checks on it. Edward didn't fit in with the rest of the world, and that employment didn't stay. He joined RADA, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, in 1958 to learn how to act. He was 21 years old. Some of his classmates, like Albert Finney, would go on to become famous, but Edward didn't remain long. He thought the school wasn't doing much to aid him. He did enjoy Clifford Turner's voice lessons, and he used the things he learned from them for the rest of his career. He left RADA in 1959 or 1960 and began to perform in tiny theaters. He apparently acquired a striped outfit from Henry Poole & Collins for $47.14 that same year, probably for auditions. He moved into a small house in Sussex called Ockenden, and kept walking around town giving speeches to anyone who would listen. He wasn't well known yet, but he was learning. At the early 1960s, he worked as a waiter at theaters in London to make ends meet. He also worked odd jobs and sought to stay in touch with the world of theater. People talked about each other all the time, and Edward silently listened to discover how the business worked. There was never any confirmation that he witnessed anything bad, like casting couch situations, but he swore he would never fall into those traps. He had a brief, uncredited role in the 1962 movie The Mindbenders. He also featured in The Loneliness of the Long-Distance Runner later that year, but he wasn't credited. He was 25 years old and having a hard time getting by, but he was making progress. He also went to Paris that year, which changed everything. Edward went to Paris in 1962 and learnt about the French New Wave film movement. He viewed movies by François Truffaut and other people, and they showed him a whole new kind of movie. It made him think about what kind of performer he wanted to be. He was still destitute and was working side jobs, but this journey gave him a reason to live. He took on more roles when he got back to London. On February 14, 1963, Edward Fox earned his first major break. He wasn't the main actor, he was only an understudy for his brother James in a play called The Importance of Being Earnest at Wyndham's Theatre. But things didn't go as planned. The two brothers had a big quarrel during practices on March 5. James said a phrase in a way that Edward didn't like, and they fought so badly that it almost wrecked the show. The director could tell that Edward had something strong in him. But the fight led to a 2-day standoff. The producer Tennant had to come in to calm them down. Edward finally got to play on April 20th. He portrayed Algernon and garnered good reviews, even though there was a lot of controversy behind the scenes. But things became even worse. Some agents considered him unprofessional and wouldn't deal with him because of the fight. He was on a blacklist for a short time. He had only gotten a little notice by the end of the play on May 15, but it was enough to keep going. Before then, Edward had tried to make films. He was an extra in The Loneliness of the Long-Distance Runner, which was filmed from June 4 to August 12, 1961, but came out in some locations in 1964. He didn't even get credit. On July 10, 1961, Tony Richardson, the director, turned him down for a bigger role because Edward looked too fancy for the position. That hurt. Edward had gone to Harrow, a posh school, and he didn't fit in with the working-class feel of the movie. But he didn't give up, he transformed. He started to learn about method acting. He followed genuine runners and workers starting on August 15 and shed 12 pounds to make himself look tougher. He added a sentence that wasn't in the script on September 3 while they were filming. Richardson yelled at him, "Stick to extras." Edward remembered how it felt to be left out when he saw the movie for the first time on September 27, 1962. He had that anguish until 1965. He just got $50 for that small part. Edward finally earned a real TV role in 1967. He was the main character in the Wednesday performance on October 18, which was called The Order. He played a soldier who was hiding his sexual orientation. Based on genuine scandals, such the Vassal case from 1962. The program aired only 3 months after Britain made homosexuality legal on July 27. People were stunned. More than 1,200 complaints came in by October 20. Some of the letters even told him to leave. One of them claimed he should be harmed on October 22. He had been getting ready for weeks, meeting radicals in Soho starting on September 5. His family had a tremendous disagreement about the role. Some family members stopped talking to him on November 1. The episode, on the other hand, received 8 million viewers. On October 15, censors edited out 3 minutes of scenes. Edward suffered panic attacks till the next year, even though he was doing well. Still, by December, he had 15 more offers. Edward had a brief part in the movie Oh What a Lovely War in 1969. He played a military aide and filming began on January 6 at Brighton Pier. On February 20, he and director Richard Attenborough had a big fight. Edward desired lines that were more against the war. They yelled at each other so much that filming had to stop for 4 hours. He was close to losing his job. The director finally gave in on February 22, although things were still tight. It harmed Edward's career until they made up in 1977. Edward acted in Battle of Britain later that year. It came out on September 15, 1969. He portrayed a pilot named Archie. The movie was shot at Duxford from April 1 to July 20. He met soldiers like Douglas Bader, who lost 23 friends in the air battles of 1940. On June 10, he listened to a speech in which someone said that one of the 103 RAF pilots would die in only a few months. Edward began to have horrible dreams. At least 3 evenings a week, he would wake up screaming. Bad weather made filming take so long that his contract went from 6 weeks to 11 months. The go-between changed Edward's life in 1971. He played the role of Viscount Trimingham, a nobleman with scars. The movie was based on a book from 1953 and was filmed in Norfolk. It first showed at Cannes on May 13, when it won the Palme d'Or. The BAFTA went to Edward for Best Supporting Actor on March 23, 1972. But there were problems behind the scenes. In July 1970, tabloids started to propagate rumors that Edward was having an affair with his co-star Julie Christie. She was 30 and he was 34. He had been married to Tracy Reed since 1958. They said that the two were kissing in between shots. The gossip was on more than 15 front pages. Edward said no in a BBC interview on August 5. The rumors, though, produced complications. The Day of the Jackal came in 1973. Edward played a killer with no feelings. He practiced with a custom .22 rifle for 60 hours starting in August 1972 and met real ex-mercenaries in Paris to become ready. MI5 began to keep an eye on him since it seemed so real. On September 15, they went to the set in Vienna because they were scared he was learning too much about how to really scare people. He got a letter at home in London on October 3. There was a bullet and a note inside. Stop digging or join the targets. It came from Marseille. Police learned that it came from a fired extra, but filming had to stop for 2 days. That delay cost $45,000. The movie came out on May 16, 1973. It cost $8 million to make and made $16 million. Over the course of 120 days, Edward's sequences were filmed in 3 different nations. He even learned how to put the sniper rifle together in less than 90 seconds. Edward played King Edward VIII in the movie Edward and Mrs. Simpson in 1978. It revealed how much the king loved Wallis Simpson and why he gave up the throne on December 10, 1936. The event ran from November 8 to December 20. But royalists were quite angry. On October 15, 200 people protested at Elstree Studios and yelled, "Traitor to the Crown." The Monarchist League wrote 1,500 letters calling for the concert to be cancelled. 5 persons were taken into custody on October 17. It cost $20,000 and filming stopped for 3 days. Edward even got a letter that said, "You will stop acting." Even so, 12 million people watched each show. On December 5, Parliament even talked about it. Critics felt the script didn't include important information, such as Edward's connections to the Nazis. Edward justified it in an interview by saying, finally, in 1979, Edward played Dr. Hendricks in The Cat and the Canary. The filming took place in Pirbright from March 5 to June 20. There was a lot of turmoil on set. Honor Blackman and Olivia Hussey, who played the same role, fought over the script. Hussey left the set on May 15, and filming stopped for a week. Costs went up from $750,000 to $1.1 million, and $80,000 of that was for overtime. Edward took over. He visited with both actresses for 3 hours at his hotel on May 22 and helped fix the matter. He said they might help make the scenes. Things were back to normal by May 25. The movie came out on the 1st of November and made $2.5 million. Hussey didn't appreciate the lesbian implications in one scene, which was part of the fight. She wanted 10 new versions. Edward later remarked that citing Shakespeare salvaged the movie. In 1982, Edward Fox took on one of the most contentious roles of his life. In the movie Gandhi, he played General Reginald Dyer. Dyer was the real British officer who told soldiers to shoot at a calm gathering in Amritsar. On April 13, 1919, roughly 15,000 individuals who weren't armed were stuck in a walled garden. Dyer told his soldiers to shoot without warning. There were 379 deaths and 1,200 injuries, according to the official report. But documents from India stated that more than 1,000 people died. Fox played the part with such frigid seriousness that when he spoke fire on screen, it sent shivers down my spine. He was nominated for a BAFTA in 1983 because of the performance, but it also had scary effects. Fox got 12 death threats while marketing the movie in London in January 1983. A few letters dubbed him the devil. Someone even stated, "Dyer's ghost will haunt you." Fox had to sleep outside his hotel room with a security guard for 10 nights. The fear was real. The movie still won 8 Oscars and generated $127 million around the world. Fox later remarked that it was the most significant role of his life, even though it put his life in danger. Fox played a role in The Dresser with Albert Finney in 1983. The movie came out in 1984. He played Norman, a dedicated assistant to an old actor in London during World War II when the city was being bombed. The movie demonstrated how crazy life is behind the scenes of a theater. With 17 really tough sequences of practice and breakdowns. But in February 1983, at a genuine rehearsal, things went too far. Finney kept in character and yelled abuses at Fox for 15 minutes straight. He said he was weak, useless, and sad. Fox started to cry. There was a 2-day break in filming. Finney later remarked that he couldn't control his method acting anymore. Fox said he didn't say anything to safeguard the scene. But he had to go to therapy following the shooting. The movie was nevertheless a smash, though. It made $5.3 million and was nominated for 5 Oscars. The New York Times said it felt brutally true on screen, and others claimed the two performers had great chemistry. Edward Fox went back to Broadway on March 15, 1986, to star in a play called The Philanthropist. He played a calm professor named Philip who was always around loud, crazy buddies. The show was at the Ethel Barrymore Theatre and brought in $1.2 million from 25,000 people who came to see it. But on April 2, during one of the dinner sequences, something surprising happened. In the middle of a speech, his trousers ripped open. About 1,000 people saw it all. The theater stayed still for 10 whole seconds. Fox instantly formed up a queue, left the stage and kept the show going. The next day, the tabloids ran with it. The New York Post said, "Fox's Foxy Flub." In the first week, ticket sales fell by 20%, and the producers pondered about canceling the performance. But Fox didn't let it die. In interviews, he laughed about it, stating, "My dignity took a hit, but the show must go on." The buzz was helpful. After that, attendance went up by 15%. It was even used in an SNL sketch years later. What began as embarrassment turned into a story that people still tell in theaters. Edward Fox also joined the James Bond universe in 1983. He played M in Never Say Never Again. It was a unique Bond movie because it wasn't part of the Aeon series. When the movie came out on October 7, it made $160 million around the world. Sean Connery came back as Bond. Fox's Bond was usually somber and harsh in 9 scenes with Connery. But things were tense behind the scenes. On April 12, the day of filming, director Irvin Kershner made alterations that were more in line with Connery's concept. Fox didn't like it. He left the stage in a rage 3 days later, on April 15. He yelled, "I'm not a puppet," in front of the team and then fled. Filming had to stop for 2 days, which cost around $200,000. Connery had to calm him down personally. They talked to one other in private. And Fox came back. He later said it was the worst day of his life on a movie set, blaming the grueling 14-hour days. Even though it had problems, the movie made $20 million more than the competing Bond movie Octopussy. Even though the walkout was still part of the tale, Fox's version of M became famous. In 1989, Fox played a British officer in the movie Return from the River Kwai, a war movie about prisoners of war from the Allies who built the Thai Burma Railway during World War II. Filming took place in Thailand's deep forests from January 15 to May 20. During the years 1942 to 1943, more than 12,000 POWs died building that railway. Fox tried his best, but on March 10, while filming a night scene in Kanchanaburi, he got attacked by mosquitoes and got quite sick with malaria. His fever went up to 104 degrees Celsius. He was sent to a hospital in Bangkok right after and had to stay there for 18 days. He lost 15 pounds. The shooting was pushed back 5 weeks, which cost the production an extra $1.2 million. Fox indicated in a 1990 interview that he feared death was close. He had scary images while he was sick, yet the discomfort made his performance stronger. The movie made barely $4.5 million, although it eventually won a BAFTA for sound. People commented that his acting appeared haunted in a way that was really authentic. Fox played Prince John in a British adaptation of Robin Hood that came out on May 13, 1991. Patrick Bergin played Robin, and the movie was darker than Kevin Costner's version, which came out on June 14, just a month later, and brought in $390 million. Fox's version had a budget of only $15 million, and things became complicated behind the scenes. The producer, John McTiernan, demanded reshoots to make sure the history was correct, which pushed everything back. People thought Fox's rendition of Prince John was a little too mean during test screenings. The final movie was 104 minutes long, but 12 minutes of his portions were removed. Fox noted that his portrayal was based on historical royal scandals, such as the violation of the Magna Carta in 1215. His part got buried, though, because the other version became so popular. Fox has been doing serious drama parts for a long time, so this was a chance for him to try something fresh. Fox was in a TV movie called September that aired on December 8, 1996. He was Archie. A man in the Scottish Highlands is stuck in a tragic love triangle. The most frightening aspect was when Pandora, played by Jacqueline Bisset, kills herself after saying she had terminal cancer. The note her character left behind was the twist. Fox noted in a November 1996 interview that this story hit near to home. His parents split up in 1951, when he was only 14. And it was a catastrophe, full of treachery and pain. James, his younger brother, was only 12. That encounter from his childhood stuck with him. There was a dispute during production regarding how graphic the scene of the suicide should be. They had to shoot several parts again, which pushed back the release date by 3 months. 4.2 million people watched it when it came on. A lot of people were shocked by how raw and real it seemed. Fox later remarked that the part helped him deal with his own family's problems. Fox was back on screen in 2002 in The Importance of Being Earnest. He portrayed a smart butler named Lane in the movie that came out on May 17. It was a modest tribute to his early playing days. Things weren't going well, though. Before the shooting started in April 2001, Fox asked for $500,000, saying he had a lengthy and respected career, including a BAFTA win. Miramax, the company that made the movie, didn't agree. There were talks for weeks, and filming was put off for 6 weeks. Fox got $350,000 and a cut of the revenues in the end. But the movie that cost $15 million only made $18 million over the world. Critics praised Fox's performance, claiming it possessed Oscar Wilde's biting wit. But they were more interested in what was going on behind the scenes. Fox later joked in an interview that it was all just business as usual. Fox played a colorful character named Lord Kilwillie on the BBC drama Monarch of the Glen from 2000 to 2005. He was in 24 episodes throughout the course of 7 seasons. The show was about a Scottish estate and the people that lived there. Things became heated in season 3. Kilwillie asked Molly, a widow, to marry him not long after her husband Hector died. Fans were quite angry. More than 1,500 letters were submitted to the BBC in March 2002, stating that the story was rude. The writers promptly modified the screenplay to make it less intense. They even stopped making it for 2 weeks to correct it. Fox defended the plot, saying it was inspired by his own life. He got married in 1973, while his family was having a lot of problems. The show still got an average of 7 million viewers. And the controversy actually made the ratings go up by 15%. It also helped Fox get a regular spot on TV, where he stayed until the show concluded on October 23, 2005. Something unusual happened in British theatre in 2010. A one-man show called Sand in the Sandwiches started going across the UK. It was about the life of the poet John Betjeman. There was only one actor on stage, Edward Fox, putting on shows for about 2 hours every night. At the time, he wasn't young either. He was in his 70s, but that didn't stop him. He put all of his efforts into performing poems and narrating personal stories from Betjeman's life every night. He didn't try to look like Betjeman, who was bald and heavy-set, but that didn't matter. What important was how Fox got the poet's essence, the warmth, charm, and sadness that made Betjeman so memorable. He liked Miss Joan Hunter Dunn and the town clerk's views the best. He claimed that Betjeman was remarkable because he spoke to people's hearts. People loved the show so much that it ran for a week at the Theatre Royal Haymarket in 2017. That was a major deal for a movie that wasn't a musical. Edward Fox joins the Doctor Who audio drama series 3 years after the broadcast first aired in 2013. It should have gone smoothly, but things went messy. The BBC had begun to crack down on content generated by fans. They were threatening people with lawsuits for making audio dramas without permission. Edward wasn't a party to any lawsuits, but he was in the heart of a bigger mess. Some people thought it was unjust. They said that the BBC was going after minor fan projects but also praised other unofficial activity. Enjoy Mission to the Unknown, a student-led recreation from 2019. Fans were confused. Edward didn't say much about it, but it was evident that the Doctor Who community was going through a peculiar and stressful moment. Edward turned to something really emotional in 2015. He and pianist Lucy Parham worked together on Elegy, Rachmaninoff, and A Heart in Exile. It was about the life of Russian composer Sergei Rachmaninoff, who left his home in 1917 and never really came back. Edward read letters and diary entries while Parham played Rachmaninoff's eerie piano music. They made something strong and silent together. There were preludes, etudes tableaux, and moments musico in the music. There were also several pieces by Tchaikovsky and Scriabin. They played it live in St. John Smith Square and then recorded it. Edward's voice on the trip reached a lot of people who may not have recognized how painful Rachmaninoff's music was before. Edward did something really unusual in 2018. He performed on stage in Oscar Wilde's An Ideal Husband with his son Freddie Fox. Edward was 81 years old. Freddie was 39 years old. In the play, they also played father and son. There was a lot of energy in the room. Edward was the Earl of Caversham, and he was very strict. Freddie played Lord Goring, a young man who was fun but yet had a lot of wisdom. The audience enjoyed how well they worked together. Edward asked, "Do you really always know what you say, sir?" Freddie said, "Yes, father, if I listen carefully." The whole theater burst out laughing. They played 8 times a week, which was hard on both of them physically, but their camaraderie made it special. Edward read poetry in 2019. These were public poetry readings, but for him, they were also a means to stand up for something he cared about: British poetry, old-fashioned beliefs, and cultural memory. At the same time, his nephew Laurence Fox was in the news for speaking out against cancel culture. Laurence even created a political party and dubbed figures in the arts and culture woke commissars. Edward didn't talk about politics explicitly. He chose poetry instead. He thought that only doing things that felt important was right. He previously claimed that performers shouldn't take every part. They should do something that really helps. But people are equally interested in Edward's personal life. He married actress Tracy Reed in 1958, when he was just starting out. She was just 17. They got divorced by 1961, yet they stayed friends for life. Tracy subsequently remarked that their marriage was doomed from the start, yet they always cared. Their daughter, Lucy Arabella Fox, became Viscountess Gormanston. Later, Tracy was in Dr. Strangelove and got married 3 more times. She died of liver cancer in 2012 at the age of 70. Joanna David is the person Edward has been with the longest. In 1971, they started dating. Amelia and Freddie were their two kids. They were together for 33 years before they got married in July 2004. Experienced major health issues in 1993, such as having brain surgery. Later on, she sent money to charity that helped with brain and cancer problems. Their daughter Amelia became famous from Silent Witness, and Freddie also became an actor. But the Fox family name hasn't always been a good thing. Laurence Fox, Edward's nephew, lost a big libel case in January 2024. He had to pay $180,000 because he falsely called two guys pedophiles online. One of the men was a drag queen who stated the criticism was too much for him. The judge found Lawrence's statements were harsh and not backed up by any evidence. Later that year, he appealed the ruling on 5 points, but it was too late. The event brought unwanted attention to the whole Fox family. Edward made news in 2021. He said he wasn't sure about the immunizations and lockdowns for COVID-19. He didn't think healthy people should have to stay alone. This was a surprise move for someone who had mainly stayed out of politics. But that wasn't totally surprising given Lawrence's opinions. A lot of people were still unhappy, though. Most British actors were at the time advising people to get vaccinated. It didn't seem right for Edward to say what he did. Edward, who was 88 at the time, staged a demonstration in Wareham in 2025. It was about saving a basic train crossing that 860 people used every day. A lot of them were old or crippled. The government intended to replace it with a ramp system that cost a lot of money and wouldn't work for wheelchairs or strollers. Edward came in person around 11 a.m. on February 1st, next to MP Vicky Slade. His fame helped get the media's notice. And more than 2,500 people signed the petition. He even talked to officials about prejudice and used the Equality Act to support his argument. On October 18th of that same year, the Purbeck Film Festival had an evening with the Fox family. Edward spoke something out loud that not many actors do during the occasion. He talked about favoritism. He remarked that having a famous last name made things easier. Robert Fox's skills as a producer and his personal reputation helped younger family members gain jobs that would have been hard for others to get. He didn't say no. He was rather clear about it, in fact. It's important to know your family name. Edward spoke considerably more in an interview that year. He had turned down major movie deals because the screenplays had been changed in what he called woke ways. He thought that the characters were no longer faithful to the stories they were based on. He didn't want to be a part of that. He thought that older performers were pressed to choose roles that advanced new ideas, but he could say no. He also claimed that cancel culture was dumb and cruel. People kept talking about his health, too. In 2025, social media said he was dead. It spread quickly, but Edward had to step up and declare he was still alive and well. He said the erroneous reports were because he wasn't seen in public as much. And the problems that Laurence has been having. He said that these kinds of scams happen too often, especially to older actors who don't use social media. He was angry that he had to deal with lies, but not saying anything simply made them louder. Edward Fox has stayed true to what important to him via poetry, politics, protests, and sorrow. At 88, he still chooses roles carefully, still speaks up when he thinks something is wrong, and constantly reminds people that being famous for a long time doesn't mean you stop caring about what's real.